first of all, the sideline reporter position is not necessary. And I fully recognize that. And now at this point in my kind of life, I use that as some serious fuel. Like they need a play-by-play and a color to call the game. They don't have to use a sideline. And so if you are going to be one, I think, and I carry this every time I do a game, like we have a serious responsibility to like uphold the position, to essentially convince everybody who watches the game and everybody working the game in the truck that like you needed us because we were going to elevate the broadcast. And I think there are sideline reporters that do that all the way from the NFL to like college sideline reporters across sports who just do such a great job of making the game personal, making you feel closer to it. We are often, who interacts a lot with the players and coaches because they see you. My role of working for a league, I mean, I'm not afraid to say, like, I know more than anybody else. And that's, it's what makes me good at my job is that the coaches recognize me and the players recognize me and they'll tell me things they won't tell somebody else. And I'm at practice and I'm there. And so whatever type of sideline role you're in, if you work for a team, if you work for a network, if you work for a league, you can really be a difference maker in a broadcast, but it takes time and like grind, like relationship building. That's what makes, when you see great people and they got a great story, they put in time for it more often than not.
Do you feel like there's ever been an experience that you've had where you kind of felt like, I mean, this role, you've done a great job of explaining how important it is and the value it can add when done right. Have you ever been in a spot where you kind of felt like the role by whoever hired you or the producers or someone in like the leadership of the broadcast kind of marginalized the position that you were in? Do you feel like that's ever happened or something you've experienced before?
Thankfully, I haven't experienced that a ton. I've worked with a lot of producers who love sideline reporters and like to get us in, so that's been great. Very early on in my career, though, this wasn't necessarily in the role of sideline, but it was more so in kind of being the person who goes out and grabs interviews, who kind of hops in there and kind of tells the story of the game. It's definitely, a woman. I had someone who worked in the organization that kind of told me, I just need you to go out there and be a Susie Q.
Mm.
And
what do you think they meant by go out there and be a Susie Q? Like, what do you think that person was trying to say by saying that?
Well, it's funny. I looked it up. Like, that's not a phrase. First of all, like I was like, I literally Googled like that.
Who is the original Susie Q?
Yeah, who is that? And so I think they just needed me to go out and be smiley and peppy. And I think there was maybe not maliciously implied, but not that serious. And the use of the word just go out there and be a Susie Q, like diminishes it. It's almost the just more than the Susie Q at times.
Interesting.
And it kind of made me feel like, well, I guess this isn't something that they think needs prep or time or preparation. Just go out there and do it. And I don't think they really meant it to hurt my feelings, but I have never.
I'm sure it did. I can't imagine it didn't.
I have never forgotten being told to go out there and be a Susie Q. And I mean, I know I've told you this.
Is this your version of the game on the lock screen in a way?
Yes, a little bit. Yeah, because I was just like, what does that mean? And how do I make sure that like I'm never thought of that way? Not only in the games that I work, but other jobs that I do or do not take. I have definitely refused to do things because serious isn't the right word, but legitimate is, to where I was like, I do think there is a level of like going to journalism college and pursuing a career, being a woman, fighting to be taken seriously, always needing to know double what everybody else knows. Like there are some jobs that I haven't wanted taken because I felt like they maybe cut into my like legitimacy a little bit. And it all stems back to being afraid of being whatever a Susie Hugh is. I mean, for years. And I still think about it.
It's so interesting because last week we were talking about, kind of how silent reporters can kind of like be too serious, where it's kind of good to like open up, show personality, have fun. But this kind of shows you like where that can lead you. Like if you're having it, or maybe not if you're having fun, but just there are just certain circumstances where you can be taken not so seriously.
Yeah.
And kind of marginalized in your role.
But it's funny too, because like one thing I personally am very big on is like, there's this really fine balance of like, I'm not going to take myself too seriously. If you look at some of the stuff that I've done, crazy things I've done in interviews, I've eaten on air, I'll tell you a wild story. You know, there's I think of the sideline reporter for the Mets who like went down the slide and like broke his arm. Like, I think that's what makes him good at his job. He doesn't take himself too seriously because we are just talking about sports. On the flip side of that, I don't think you want to ever put yourself in a position where people question your like commitment or like seriousness,
your
about
integrity,
yes. And so, yeah.
You still want people to respect you.
Yeah. Which doesn't mean, because I would not consider myself a serious sideline reporter. I think I always lean towards being more like personable and fun, and a little bit more out there, which is also a choice. So it's not that. It's more so that I just want to be good at it.
Do you remember that time we were working at USSSA and I was filming, you were interviewing a young baseball player, young kid. He must have been like 8 years old. And he was giving you some like honestly cocky answers. And you're like, you think you could beat me in a race? And he was like, yeah. And you're like, all right, let's race then. Drops the mic, and then just the two of you just lined up. And I filmed the whole, I was like, okay, we're shifting. This is no longer an interview. This is now competition. And the two of you raced against each other. And I think he got you by just a hair. I think I remember he got you by just a hair. But just, I thought that was so just hilarious and brilliant, and just, who would have thought to do that? It's like, you're interviewing that kid.
I forgot that I did that.
Yeah, I remember it so clearly because you're interviewing the kid. He's not really playing ball. He's not really giving you any good answers. He's kind of just shrugging, looking around.
He was a cocky little thing too.
He was. And you're like, okay, you think you could beat me in a race?
Wait,
like,
I remember it now. I was asking him something about like his strengths or something on the field, because again, we're on like the fifth answer and I got nothing. And he's like, well, I'm really fast. And I was like, well, how fast? And I forget what he said back. And I was like, I started naming, I was like, are you the fastest kid on your team?
You're like, are you faster than your dad? Are you faster than your dog?
Yeah, I was like, you think you're faster than me? He was like, yeah. And I was like, well, let's go.
That like he perked up. He was like, what?
Yeah.
But it was so amazing.
In hindsight, it's like, this is also maybe first year out of college. I'm interviewing a 11-year-old right now.
Correct.
This is not the World Series.
You don't exactly get a lot to work with when you're interviewing 11-year-old boys.
No. Which it was a great challenge of, how do I make this interesting?
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. For more on sports media and working in the industry, subscribe to the How to Cook a Goose podcast.